Welcome to EuropeChats. I have a fantastic guest today, Klara Lindström, analyst at the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies. She previously worked at East Capital Group, at the Swedish Armed Forces Headquarters, and the Swedish Ministry of Defence. She also served at the Embassy of Sweden in Moscow from 2018 to 2020 and worked as a military interpreter in Ukraine in 2021. Clara is an expert on Ukraine's domestic politics and reforms, EU enlargement, and Russian studies. She regularly travels to Ukraine for around 2-3 weeks every other month. Clara, I'm very grateful that you're willing to share with us your experiences from Ukraine and Ukraine's perspectives on war, peace, and membership to the European Union. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
You travel to Ukraine regularly, not only in Kyiv, but also to smaller cities, most recently Chernihiv. What main insights and experience would you highlight from your latest visits in January 2026?
I would say that the winter is tough. It's grim. It's cold. And when you are without heating and electricity, it's not nice. So the fact that we have a humanitarian crisis unfolding is quite remarkable, that we have this ongoing in Europe and that it's due to Russia's unlawful attacks. But I think one of my main takeaways, despite this grim situation, this harsh winter, is that vulnerability can coexist with resilience. So it's not imminent societal collapse. Ukrainians will continue fighting, and that's what polls are showing as well. But it's this, back in 2022, just before the full-scale invasion, maybe the main challenge was to show Ukrainians are resilient. And now a challenge is to say that you can be resilient, but you are still only human.
Ukrainian cities suffer big energy blackouts and destruction of heating systems in temperatures as low as -25 as a result of consistent Russian bombing of Ukrainian energy infrastructure over many months. What is the plan both in terms of defending Ukraine from further energy attacks and repairing the energy system?
I would say one of the most important and urgent tasks now is really to step up the military support. It's about giving Ukraine the equipment and the mandate to really defend itself. And when you see in the military packages, there was just one now coming from Sweden, really focusing on air defense capabilities. So this is really key. But planning ahead, it's also about what to do for the next winter. And how to ensure that we have the right plans and strategies and material for protecting this critical infrastructure.
Well, the West is now busy talking about the peace plan, right? But while this is happening, Russia is methodically destroying Ukraine, its energy infrastructure. Aren't we getting a bit distracted by thinking too much about peace and Ukraine's post-war reconstruction? I mean, all very important, but isn't this happening at the detriment of actual support of Ukraine that Ukraine needs urgently on the ground now?
Yes, I think you're right. And one of the things that strikes me is this dissonance when you just read European media about these talks, which I don't see as peace negotiations. They're not, but these talks. You get the impression that this deal is imminent. There will be soon an end to the war. But when you are in the Ukrainian realities on the ground, Russia is showing through all its actions that it's not interested in ending the war, and that it's far from achieving its strategic goals of eliminating Ukrainian independence and Ukrainian existence as a sovereign nation and culture. So it's this that can frustrate me sometimes, and even make me a bit uninterested in following all these talks, even though they're important, and there's of course reporting about it in Ukraine as well. But it sort of feels like this theater, and that always follows the same choreography. You have this talk in one city, and the Russians are sending some, and there are talks, and it's really close, and then, oh no, actually there was this one condition. It didn't happen. So it's always the same dance. And at some point, it's not that interesting any longer to follow.
Yes. What were your impressions about Ukrainians themselves' views on possible outcome from this war? Do you think that they are seeing an end of the war, and at what terms?
Well, there was some really interesting sociological data coming out from opinion polls done now by Ukrainian Institute. Perhaps we could link to the listeners and viewers. It was only around 20% or so that think there will be an imminent or an end to the war soon. So the overwhelming majority think that this will go on for a long time.
What is the support for Zelensky, and to what extent do you think that he has flexibility to negotiate this? Where is he standing, and where are the citizens standing? Like,
Well, I think we have what we have in terms of leadership, in terms of the parliamentarians as well in the Rada, Ukrainian parliament, and the top leadership. So maybe people have their own personal views, and some voted for Zelensky, and some did not. But he's the president. He's the leader we have.
what was your impression on Ukrainian citizens' views on the extent of support provided by the EU and its member states?
Well, I guess so. If you are to make a case for yourself, a good approach could be to under-promise and then over-deliver. But the EU seems to do the opposite. So it's over-promising and under-delivering, which is not great when it comes to expectation management. So my impression is that there's a frustration, there's some disappointment, but at the same time, there's a realization that we are in the same boat with Europe. We're in it together, and there's no other choice than to continue pursuing the European path.
Would you say that there is any difference between regions or between different age groups in their attitudes towards war and peace?
I would say there are differences. So one of the reasons why I try to always get out of Kyiv during my stays in Ukraine is that Ukraine is really a big country, and it's a multifaceted country.
Yeah.
With a strong degree of decentralization. So regions play a very important role in the political landscape. And let's be frank, when you implement EU acquis as well, that's done in municipalities at regional level. So that's where the action happens. EU integration in practice is not only, of course, you need national level strategies and reforms, but the real action is out in the localities and the regions. And there, I think it becomes more stark, these problems with human capacity, for example. Can we really do everything at once? Can we really do everything at this pace? Who is to do it, and how can we ensure that this work is sustainable of building institutions from the inside? And just finally on the age, I think actually what really inspires me when I'm in Ukraine is this overall national sense of a civilizational choice in favor of Europe. I had this one meeting up in Chernihiv with Holova, so sort of the head of municipality there. He had no idea about the different technical small aspects of the acquis, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
But he said very clearly to me, Clara, I choose Europe. And these are all the things we're doing in favor of this, etc. So across all age cohorts, I would say that the support for Europe remains very strong.
Speaking about acquis, the Commission is now advancing this idea of front-loading Ukraine's membership to the European Union. The details are still to be carved out, but the concept is that Ukraine will become a EU member state by 2027 or 2028, with various transitional measures, opt-outs, and most likely no voting rights. Now, President Zelensky has also emphasized that this is very important for Ukraine to get an end date for Ukraine's accession so that Russia does not derail Ukraine's accession process. Numerous reforms then would need to be implemented by Ukraine once it's already an EU member in order for it to become a full EU member. So how would you see this unfold in practice? Would EU accession make a significant contribution to Ukraine's security as well?
Mm. Well, you outlined what we know so far about this proposal quite well, which is the sort of the schematic idea for this. But I'm eagerly waiting, the formal proposal and to read this in writing. We're not there yet. But I have been asking some of my Ukrainian colleagues and interlocutors of why that would be beneficial for Ukraine. Because in a way, you could look at this then as a membership in theory, but not in practice, because it's without that much content yet. That will come with time. What difference does that make? Quite many of my Ukrainian colleagues say belonging matters. Being in this gray zone, politically, militarily, is a security risk for Ukraine. It's also a security risk, of course, for Europe. So it's in the strategic interest of Europe to have Ukraine in institutionally, politically. And maybe, we're in a very formative era in global politics and European politics. The Europe that will come out of this with Ukraine in will probably be another kind of Europe. And I think it matters that Ukraine is in there from start, as one of the subjects, as one of the actors in these strategic dialogues and decisions that are shaping the future of Europe.
So, Clara, would you say that Ukraine's membership to the EU, even if partial, would already positively contribute to its security?
I would. I wouldn't go as far as saying, EU membership, hence security guarantee. We know we have Article 42.7, which speaks of collective military support, but it's about the operative capabilities that are backing that up. But it will be an important part of the puzzle, and it could unlock in the security sphere things that truly are enhancing Europe's and Ukraine's security. Could be even smoother cooperation in defense industry, for example, which is really a mutual win-win.
Sweden, where you come from, was one of the initiators of the Eastern Partnership policy in 2009 and one of the biggest supporters of Ukraine since the beginning. Would you say that Sweden looks differently now to Russia after 17 years? And what are the if there are any changes in Swedish views on the European project itself, on European security architecture, what would they be?
Well, maybe I'll start from that point on the views on the European project. Sweden has always been this sort of reluctant member. We haven't joined the euro. We're still quite reluctant when it comes to, we're still frugal when it comes to budgetary issues. Sweden is quite bad at getting Swedes in the institutions as well. So we're really not that in it. But I think given the extremely strong and solid support for Ukraine, there's this realization that enlargement is a key security enhancing tool for the European Union, and that we need to work together as Europeans. That, as I said before, we're in the same boat as Europeans, together with the Ukrainians who are also Europeans. So that has changed, I think, in becoming a bit more bold, albeit reluctantly, but I think there's more of a European vision on behalf of the Swedes. When it comes to the view on Russia, Russia has been sort of the enemy that we have, structured our armed forces and military planning against in the past as well. But of course, one of the biggest changes in the Swedish mindset was that we decided to join NATO. which is a very big change in our strategic view, which again is showcasing that there was a realization in the Swedish society and among politicians that we need to work together in the alliances and coalitions that we have, that we're stronger together.
Do you think eventually Ukraine will also join NATO? Or is it even a relevant question at this point?
I mean, when I speak about NATO with my Ukrainian colleagues in Ukraine, it's what is really Article 5? And what is it? But if one of Russia's goals is also to create disunity in the West, to undermine Article 5, then we should do what we can to keep that intact. And now the NATO prospect doesn't seem so likely, to say the least. But never say never in global politics.
And is that somehow understood among the public in Ukraine? I'm asking because I was reading an excellent paper recently, not a paper, a study actually, of a PhD student, which was about earlier processes, the Revolution of Dignity, and he was narrating how there was this mismatch between what Europeans were able to propose or to commit for Ukraine and how Ukrainians understood European commitments. There was a huge mismatch. And now I wonder whether such a mismatch still exists also when it comes to NATO.
I think one of the problems throughout the decades of Ukrainian struggle for its European belonging is that it has seen itself as, of course, a European country.
Yes.
But it has not been seen as one by other EU member states or by countries in the West. And if this full-scale war has changed anything, it has changed a lot. But one of the things that I think is important and deep is that Ukraine's identity and role as a subject, as a European country, is also starting to take root and spread across Europe. And that, I think, will have important implications, both for the EU accession process and for joining other alliances or multilateral forums.
And I can imagine this also giving motivation to Ukrainians for their fight for freedom.
Exactly.
Clara, as surprising as it might seem, many people in the EU are still asking why the European Union will be stronger with Ukraine as its member state than without. What would be your response to them?
Yes. Well, this comes up, of course, time and time again. And I think a good starter is to say that the security argument doesn't fly as well across Europe, because threat perceptions will differ. Countries are at different distance from Russia. But there are a lot of socio-economic arguments in favor of Ukraine's accession as well. The potential in Ukraine's agricultural industry, I mean, agriculture is often presented as, oh no, Ukraine can't become a member. But it will have lots of added value for the European agricultural sector as well, especially the food security and coming in important value chains. It has an incredibly digitalized economy. When I'm at restaurants in Kyiv, you always just pay with your QR code and you can split the bill a lot easier. And then you come to, I was at a restaurant yesterday here in Brussels and it was all cash only. It felt very far away from Kyiv. Also, not least the defense industry, including all the products of dual use there as well. There's so many initiatives on a European level on scaling up defense industry initiatives, making our defense industry relevant for a modern warfare. And here we have our partner who is willing and able to contribute with innovation, technique, expertise, experience as a mutual win-win. So for the competitiveness, for the prosperity, this will be an opportunity for the EU. And that is not to be naive and to say, oh, so it will just be absorbed. It will require policy changes. But those policy changes are also necessary to make the European Union relevant in the new era. So it will require work, but the European Union is a lot safer and will be a lot more prosperous with Ukraine in, and it will be better for the citizens.
I agree with you completely. But how would you talk to the French, for example, who are extremely afraid of Ukrainian farmers and the impact of Ukraine being EU member state on their agriculture?
Yeah, I think a whole new, more targeted strategic communication about what Ukraine's accession means is necessary. And I know that Ukrainian stakeholders are working on this already to understand for the given member state, what are the most contentious issues? How can we have a bilateral dialogue on this to show that, yes, there will be changes, but it will be a transition period, or these are the policy adaptations we make. I mean, that's how it's been with all enlargement waves. But we need to have those inclusive dialogues because we need to take the worries seriously. We can't just dismiss them. They are there.
Clara, last question, perhaps. If you could summarize very shortly, what were the main expectations from the Ukrainians that you met recently during your visits vis-a-vis the European Union and its member states? What it would be?
Well, I'd say I listened to an amazing Ukrainian public intellectual, Valery Pekar, who said that Ukraine, in contrast to Russia, who fights for the past, some kind of imperial past, Ukraine fights for the future. And what is that future? Well, it's quite it's one that just makes sense and that is legitimate. Ukraine is fighting to be just a normal European democratic state that is part of this European project that we are building together for prosperity, for citizens. And that is a vision, I think, that can help Europe in getting back to why we're doing this. If there's anything that I lack in European policy discourse, is this conviction that our project and that what we are doing is worthwhile defending and why we have it, that we believe in this system. Where is that sort of strategic visionary thinking? And that's what I get when I'm in Ukraine. That's why it's so inspiring. And that's why the Ukrainians, I think, can revitalize and inspire the European project. And that, if anything, we should be grateful for.
Thank you very much, Clara, for this fascinating discussion, for sharing your experiences from the ground, and thank you all for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like the show.